Welcome to Real World Strategy Dialogues, powered by EY-Parthenon, right here on businesstech.co.za. I am your host, Taylor Orton, and today we are kicking off this new series on how to approach and maintain growth in a constantly changing environment. As the head of strategy and innovation for EY-Parthenon, I am supporting a number of organizations in finding the right answer for their business to the question, is your strategy planning for the future or creating it? Over the next 4 episodes, we're inviting strategic leaders from South Africa's top companies to have a candid discussion about how they are creating, adapting, and applying their strategy in these uncertain and volatile times. Throughout this series, we'll explore how business leaders redefine their organization's purpose, adjust to shifting market dynamics, and champion innovation. We'll be discussing their approach to digital transformation, their methods of optimizing growth strategies, and their paths towards embedding sustainability into their business models. But first, my guest today is my esteemed colleague, friend, and soon-to-be co-host, Adrian Saville. Adrian is a recognized strategist, academic, economist, and investment manager with over 25 years of global corporate experience. And similar to me, specializes in market entry and business model innovation. He holds a professorship at the Gordon Institute of Business Science, where he teaches, among other subjects, strategy, investment finance, and macroeconomics. Welcome, Adrian.
Thanks, Heather. Great to be with you.
Many of the organizations we work with are wrestling with how they create geopolitically robust strategies that generate resilience within their value chain and drives growth in a sustainable way. Against a backdrop of an election supercycle where over 50% of the global population will head to the polls this year, competition for commodities shifting global supply and demand dynamics, and the continued challenges around enabling infrastructure, how does corporate South Africa think about what is to come?
Heather, I think that there's, just in that statement, you highlight one of the most extraordinary challenges for business, which is being able to see around corners where what's around the corner is some combination of unknowable or uncertain. And this is a lovely sort of set of phrases that are captured in the work of strategy, where uncertainty refers to the likelihood of outcomes. You can flip a coin and anticipate something happens, heads or tails. Unknowability is you flip a coin and the coin doesn't land. And very often when we think about these sort of major political events like 2024, and you've highlighted the wave of elections that happens around the globe. We've already had some of the important ones, Taiwan, Indonesia this year. Just in a couple of weeks' time, we've got the South African May election, which may well be a landmark moment in South Africa's political history. And then, of course, there's the November event, which could usher in Trump too. And, I think it equips businesses to recognize that any one of these might be a landscape changer for their enterprise, for their business environment. And then, more than that, we need to add into the mix other things that would substantially disrupt or at least disturb the business environment. To point to some obvious ones, the fact that India is now the world's largest population, risks of climate change and global warming. Politicians are pointing to 1.5 degrees. That seems like a racing certainty rather than an ambition or a goal or a policy target. We've got chest beating with events around China, Taiwan, etc., etc. And any one of these things, taken in and of themselves, would be massively disruptive to business. And I think it equips business to think hard about how are they positioned to deal with those uncertainties or even unknowabilities, and a likelihood that not one of those events might transpire, but what happens if a couple of them or even all of them happen.
And so building on that, I think what we're seeing in the market is that, the sort of desire or the need for innovation is increasing across the marketplace. And, to kind of tackle those things that you mentioned around sort of uncertainty, and knowability. I recently presented on the BCX Innovation Index findings at the recent CXO Network event. And one of the core themes that was consistent across not only those who were presenting, but the people in the room, was that it's how do you adapt and adopt change across your organization as you sort of face these uncertainties. So, I mean, how do you see organizations not only building their strategies, but then applying them to their organizations in a sort of sustainable way?
So overwhelmingly, businesses aren't in the industry of innovation and adjusting with agility to changed environments. And you see this again and again across industries, across geographies, and it really manifests in life expectancy of companies. If we take the case of South Africa, there's a piece of work that we did a few years ago in looking at the survivorship of South Africa's biggest businesses. And over a period of a little more than 30 years, of the JSE's largest 100 firms, 85% of them had fallen outside of the top 100, and only 75% of them, and 75% of them had died. So overwhelmingly, the experience of giant businesses was either they fell out of the top 100, that was a good outcome, but more likely than not, they actually died with a 75% death rate of those 100 giant businesses. And that seems like a very grand or arrogant statement to make, right now. Run your list through the largest 100 companies in South Africa and say, in 30 odd years, three quarters of you are going to be dead. To me, that's about a failure to innovate. And this is also evidenced in other pieces of research. The very well-known Harvard Business Review publication produces a report of Norton and Kaplan, where they say that strategy is where the rubber hits the sky and not the road. In other words, strategy is the stuff of talking about doing things, but never really getting to doing it. And to me, those would be the two big go-tos for business. Are you in the industry of thinking hard about your business model, your relevance, innovation, and then not only thinking about it, what are you doing about it? And can we measure those advances, gains, or activities?
From your perspective, what are some of those things that organizations really need to kind of focus on in order to be able to set the platform to disrupt from within?
1 in 10 ideas are going to land. Many of the ideas simply won't. Now, that's a very hard thing to entertain when you're focused on monthly reporting or quarterly results. That's a very hard idea to entertain, that we're going to really back 10 things and 9 of them are going to lose money. It's a venture capital mindset, and it in many places is going to be sort of anathema or alien to the established thinking. So when we look at businesses that have thrived in changing environments, what we see in these businesses is you've suggested innovation. They innovate at every level of the firm. It's not grand innovation at the top that's pushed down through the business, but they are obsessed with improvement. And if it's micro innovation all the way through to macro innovation, they have a very stable leadership. They know how to attract and retain talent. This word culture, easy to say, hard to entrench. But this culture, a sense of purpose and belonging in the business, is inescapable. And as much as we're saying that they are innovating and bringing a sort of a venture capital mindset, in part that is encouraged by what I'd refer to as federal structures where you can take risks. You're given the latitude to take risks in the part of the organization that you are looking after, but there is an accountability for those risks. So there is an embracing of a risk-taking culture, but it's not risk for the sake of risk. And then, maybe a further aspect or two further aspects that you make me think of is, curiously, they tend to behave countercyclically. When everyone's breathing out, they're breathing in, and when everyone's breathing in, they're breathing out. So they tend to be a little bit contrarian in their behaviors and their characteristics. And then finally, when it comes to innovation, they generally don't take massive single bets. They take lots of small bets, and they look for evidence that the idea is working. And then when they have early evidence that the idea is working, then they invest more seriously and with greater intent. So in this, I would describe them as evidence-based organization.
So, I mean, that brings us very nicely to my next question, which is, what are some of the sort of strategic imperatives that you think executive leadership teams need to get right in order to be successful? And maybe not just in an innovation perspective, but also from a sort of strategic ambition and intent perspective.
So I think that, there's a couple of things that matter here. The first is being sure that the direction of travel is the result of skill, not luck. And these are easily confused when businesses tell us how they are doing. They confuse very helpful tailwinds like industry drivers or economic growth, fortunate events. COVID was really good to some businesses and helped Zoom get a market cap bigger than ExxonMobil. That had almost nothing to do with Zoom's brilliance, and a lot to do with things that were done to Zoom. So, are you sure that your direction of travel is the place you intend it to be? And that would be, distinguishing skill from luck, and instilling that culture in your organization is absolutely critical. Recognizing that planning is an important part of the business, but most of the businesses that have achieved very impressive results, if we look at the work published by Michael Rayner on businesses that are really skilled rather than lucky, one of the standout features of them is that they adjust their business plans regularly, that they aren't beholden to static, fossilized 5-year plans, and there is no way we're going to shift this. When one of my favorite economists, John Maynard Keynes, says that when the facts change, I change my mind. And I think that equips us when we're thinking about the direction of travel or the direction of intent in our business strategy.
And I've seen it again. My other favorite one is Disney. The story when I had the privilege of working with them for a period of time, and the Michael Eisner story is quite an interesting one because he was very successful for a very long period of time, and then to a certain degree, he sort of his vision was sort of got narrowed, and yeah, it took some sort of significant change for them to then become the company they are today.
Do you think it's possible to predict or preempt that narrowing of vision? Is there a way of figuring out companies that have got tunnel vision?
It's a good question. I mean, I think for me, I always say, data helps you inform the decision, and you can often see it, I think, in the data. And in many organizations where I've seen that kind of tipping point for whether they're going to jump the S curve or whether they're not, is their data trending downwards or upwards, and at what point do you look to change that? Yeah, I think I agree with you in the fact that when organizations regularly review their market, regularly, because I think it's external and internal factors that you need to constantly manage. And as long as you're doing that on a regular basis, and I would say your 2 to 3 outlook is definitely what should be happening now. Maybe in certain industries like mining, we're still looking at that kind of 5 to 10 year trajectory. But even in mining, I would challenge that the way that the renewable energy landscape is changing at the moment, that even mines need to consider, what they do differently every 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, if I could hitch on to that where you reference mining, the extraordinary story of Dutch State Mines, DSM, where 100 years ago it's a coal mine, and today DSM is a global leader in biotech and healthcare, having spectacularly changed the business model. And I love the fact that you reference data because data can be a really sober judge of how you're performing, and businesses asking themselves questions that might include, the 3M example. What percentage of our revenue is new product from the last 3 or 5 years? What is our spend on research and development? How does that compare to or product innovation, service innovation? How does that compare to our competitors and peers? Have we grown any new businesses? Have we developed any new products? And asking those very hard but questions, and looking at the sober results is, I think, a great way of assessing your ability or capability to innovate.
Agreed. And again, I think I had an interesting conversation with a CIO recently, and he said, that you have to get the data right. You might be data rich, but you might be information poor. And so it's how do you interpret that data in a way that allows you to make decisions. Shifting focus to a personal side of strategy, what guiding principles or strategies do you employ to successfully navigate, the significant responsibilities of the roles that you carry?
Yeah, the one answer would be there's just never enough hours in the day. I've got, I suppose you could call this the entrepreneur's curse, that I'm involved in a couple of businesses. I've got an incredibly exciting academic career. I have a professorship at the Gordon Institute of Business Science. I also happen to have a professorship in Toronto at the Rotman School of Management. And that just means there, really aren't enough hours in the day. So how do you strategize to look after this portfolio? And I think that's in part, it's about saying no. A very important part of strategy is saying, I can't do this. I can't carry on with this. I've got to stop. I love the work that Annie Duke does in her book, Quit, her recent book, where Annie Duke says, so much of strategy focuses on what you say yes to and how you persist and pursue, how you endure. But I think a key part is knowing what you shouldn't be doing. And so Annie Duke's practice of quitting, I think, is one of the things that that guides me, knowing what to say no to and knowing what to stop. And then a second feature would be, I've got the incredible fortune or privilege of having a portfolio of opportunities. And from that, I can pursue the things that absolutely fascinate me. And I think that sense of passion and purpose, really give you a commitment to what you're doing. And, not just blind commitment, but a commitment to go to sleep thinking about these things and waking up and being exhilarated about the day that faces you.
Thank you, Adrian. Well, that concludes our captivating conversation with Adrian Saville. Thank you, Adrian, for shedding light on the complexities and potential of real world strategies in the business world.